Thank you. You're all going to A plus because you've already been in church for a couple hours. And so thank you for having the after party here at the Social Conversation today. I don't want it to be too long, but I do want to thank you for, I guess, as the way our church is structured, you know, doing the homily, of course, I talk and I hope you're listening, you know. But also, I don't want this to be, like I said, a formal presentation. I don't have a PowerPoint on the slides. I don't have anything. I want to have a conversation with you about leadership. And it offers a couple insights that might be helpful. But I really want to listen to you, and I also want you to listen to each other in terms of how do you really become, as we heard Mary say, fully trained, the gifts that God has given to you. First of all, as I mentioned, you all have a gift from the Lord, from God. You know, you have that. And I think sometimes we kind of put on the bushel basket sometimes, kind of let it light shine. And part of church is sharing our gifts. I'm not a pastor currently, but if I were, one of the things, when I was a pastor at St. Martin's, one of the things I was very, very intentional about was I did not like the phrase, the church closed, in March of 20. I really rejected that language. Why do you think I was very, even the Archbishop came in June of 20 to celebrate Mass. He wanted to visit an urban parish. And why do you think I told Archbishop Perez, do not say, he said, I'm so glad I'm going to open the church up again, you know? And I said, don't say that. You know, why do you think I said, don't say the church closed?
We are the church.
Exactly.
Church never closed.
Exactly. I think sometimes we get that language about, is the church open today? You know? So I was very intentional that we were not going to simply just shut down for COVID. Not let COVID kill us.
That's right.
And so what we really did, we kind of doubled down on the things that make us church, prayer and service. So we became like with small faith communities we started doing. I was part of one myself. We would kind of check on each other, how you doing, you know? And we would all kind of use all the social media pieces, whether it was Zoom and Teams and texting and stuff. So we used that. I can't imagine, I can't say how many times I went to those parades, those visiting people when they're celebrating their birthdays. So I went and just those drive-by celebrations in the car and waving at people, gave out food every week, examples of church. So, but I think now, as I said today, in my homily, and I'm the kind of preacher, I had notes, but also the Holy Spirit.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Different direction. So I hope I didn't say too much. But anyway, but one of the things I tried to say was the fact that, let me ask you this question. What does it mean to, when I say something, I said, come back. Come back to what? I was saying, come back to church, or come back to school, like, as opposed to renewing the church. Did you hear that point today in my house? Mm-hmm. What do you think that meant? That we don't want to simply bring people back, but to really move people forward. What does that mean?
I think when you say, at least how I was receiving it at the moment, is that we don't want to go back. I mean, reaching back in order to move forward, Sankofa, that's one thing, but we don't want to go back to where we were. We're supposed to, as church, always be moving forward, always be moving closer to the kingdom. And so that's what I heard.
Somebody add to that, please? What do I mean by, whether it's education or any kind of leadership today, anybody who's leading has to be looking forward. You have a restaurant. If you think you're going to just have a restaurant, let's bring people back into in-person dining. What would I tell you? Yes.
I think we all came through this process, so why would we bring so why would we just go back to something that was broken in the first place? And I think all of us have grown and changed and had new values that wanting to bring those into whatever.
What else? Yes.
I think we have to go back to what Isaiah said. Like COVID, to me, was the opportunity. I think God was calling us to something new, because obviously what we were doing, we weren't paying attention to Him, we weren't paying attention to each other. Everybody was all self, kind of. And He said, I'm doing something new. And I remember I was watching Dr. Charles this was one of his old sermons, but it was so fitting for today because he said, God is shaking things up. And so, that kind of like, I see that. And also I was listening to, a tribal leader out of Canada, and he's from the Hopi tribe, and he was saying that there were like 3 shakes of the earth, and we're in like the 3rd phase of things really being shaken up, and you gotta pay attention. So it's time to do something new, you know.
So these kind of conversations you're having, you really kind of have your own little synod, in a sense. Pope Francis talked about a listening session, a listening church. But really what you're doing is, you're already doing that, you know, in terms of what I try to offer today. And I think most especially what Ms. Lee's going to offer in her sessions with you. She's a very gifted, talented woman, and she will bring all her gifts as an educator, as a leader, as an administrator, as a mom, all the things she brings to the table. But I do think it's a moment for us of renewal as church. And a couple things just to add into our conversation today. I think the first is vision.
Right.
Knowing what are you trying to accomplish here? One of the things, I'm a visual learner, I learn by seeing, and what I noticed today was an opportunity that we can have a church that can be diverse racially. A church that's diverse in gender. A church that is diverse, we always say the big D, in terms of all that. You know, and so that's a moment St. Vincent's has that you're known for. And I really encourage you to keep that up. That's not normal. You're not normal, okay? That's a good thing. But a lot of times we have spaces, what did Dr. King say about the surgery time on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock? You know, so continue to be a space where I can bring myself here and be welcomed. You know, when we priests, these guys, us guys, when we do the work of think it's my church as opposed to God's church, but we do this idea, this my little kingdom, you can come, you can't come, you can get Eucharist, you can't get Eucharist. None of us deserve Eucharist. Bro.
Come on now. Come on.
I don't. I come begging because I need sustenance. But I don't deserve anything but God's justice. But that's, not only is it the wrong thing to be exclusive, because that's how God works, it's also, it's not the smart thing to do. Because one of the things that COVID did was that it gave people agency to make choices.
Wow.
I know a brother said, I'm not having live stream because they gotta come back in person. Wasn't prophesied. And I'm like, do you really think because the priest or the bishop said you gotta come back in person and you cut live stream off, that folks are just not gonna do it anymore? They're gonna go to another church. They're gonna change channels. So the wise person is finding diversity in expression, even in terms of engagement. I mean, at St. Martin's, you know, we start live stream and e-giving, and that's really one of the ways we survive financially. We actually increased our financial giving in COVID. Increased it. Because I said, if this church, and I would just personally, just me, I would not take the PPP bailout. I refused it. So some churches took it, and again, I'm not trying to say anything about other places, but as for me and my house, I just felt that if this church is going to make it, it's by God's grace and people's generosity. I felt that the loan was for the small business person. I married a family that, a young man and a lady, who he had just opened a gym up in North Philly, and he went under because he didn't have all the stuff of getting the loan. He fell into financially. So for me, again, this is my I got some pushback because part of leadership, folks. So we did well, and people kept giving. Because, and also, we were very intentional not taking any money from our site. We wanted nothing in terms of financial support for our sites. So we wanted to be free financially. So anyway, but again, that point about having a clear vision, another thing I want to just add to our conversation is being able to collaborate and work together. I'm not sure where you are with that as a community, but that's something that's very toxic. A lot of people personalize things.
Right.
And because I don't like you, I won't work with you. And that's a dangerous model for leaders. You know, learning how to work with people we don't care for is a key element of leadership. You know, when I was in the Office of Black Catholics for 7 years, you know, I got a lot of pushback from my brother priests. A lot of my brother priests, you know, didn't want to work with me. But how do I criticize Washington if I don't cross the line, cross the aisle, and work with people I disagree with? I don't have to go to dinner with you to work with you. I would like you to work with you. If we're fixed on the goal, and more hands, that's why, again, it's the right thing to do to have Justice Jackson on the court. But it's also the smart thing. Because women bring a lens of justice that we don't have as men. There's a lens there that's needed. So learning how to work with people that are different than ourselves is critical. So that point about clear vision, you know, collaboration, and I think too, you know, just a real sense of again, back to the inclusion part, really to be inclusive, and to be clear about reaching out to people who are not in the room.
Oh, okay.
You know, I think that's, again, I'm always mindful of who's not in the room, whether it's by age, by race, by gender, or whoever it be. What perspective is not in the room? And then have that work together for the good of the community. Again, I don't want to talk too much. So, does that make sense about, let's start with the idea of working with people you don't agree. Does that make sense? Tell me a little bit about how you feel about that. How do you feel about working with people? Any experience of working with people that you may not agree with or personally like? What does that mean? What does it look like in terms of,
So for me, I've been in a lot of different leadership roles, being a manager of restaurants and working in the church. And you just have to pick your battles. The hill that you want to sing on, the hill that you know is something special and important and integral to your faith when you're working with these communities and when you're working with other communities, that thing that you need to see done or that thing that you need to go to God with to bring to fruition. And then there's those other things throughout the way that you need to see what others are saying, even if you're not on the same page or you want to do it a different way, that it's not your way, it's God's way, and God's always going to handle the results as long as I'm doing the next right thing. So if I'm doing the next right thing, I can't blame others for what they want to do or what they're doing and they think is right, and I have to see it from a different perspective, and that's the best way that I can lead the people is to be a part of the people and be in a group and hear what people want to say. Because if I want people to listen to what I have to say, then I have to be a listener. And I think that's a big part of being a good leader, is being a good listener. And Father Joseph said a couple of Sundays that it's easy to pray for your friends and those people you love and want them to do well, but you need to be praying for those people you can't stand. That's who you need to pray for.
and that goes back to the vision part, because when we have God's vision in our mind, you know, it does give us a different perspective of how we work with people, because we know the vision is God's. And that gives us an opportunity to realize it's not mine. It's God's. And because it's God's, then who am I to say you can't come in and share your gifts? Another thing to add to that little gumbo today of conversation is part of leadership is letting go. I love American history. And actually, I was teaching history last year in the middle of January 6th. It was a very right time to teach about the First Amendment. But the Senate is a critical body in this country's government. You think about how old and how white and how male the Senate is. We didn't have a 50-50 Senate. I don't care who Judge Jackson is, she wouldn't get in. Some of those folks, I gotta go. And the same thing, even leadership, and I think sometimes people say, again, I love stories, it's part of how I teach and preach. I remember at St. Martin's, I noticed when I first got there that the lectors were usually older people, older than me. And I said, and we have youth Sunday was once a month. We had all these young people wanting to read. Little kids, college people, high school people. And I said to the parish council, liturgy committee, I said, what if we began to have intergenerational lectors? Like an older person, elder, and a youth. And immediately it was, you don't like old people. I see where this is going. You're trying to get rid of us. I said, no. It's called shared ministry. And some of my main haters, who really thought out to get rid of old people, I've been ushering here, reading here since 1951. Exactly. This is my ministry, as opposed to God's ministry.
That's right. That's right.
And I said, give it a chance. And I noticed part of being a leader is also the suffering too, for the vision. So I noticed after a few weeks, we said we're going to start having intergenerational. And the same person who was one of my haters began to celebrate as I was watching her read the Word of God with a young person who needed some help. That's true. I'm not trying to do anything but invite you to your role of mentor, or mentor. Invite you to a role of support. And also, if we're ever going to move the needle in leadership, and especially around race, we got to give up some power. And that's where folks get very uncomfortable. Because power is about me. You don't like me anymore. No. Is that what does God invite you to do in different roles? People say, you're not a pastor, you have no power. Well, I got Jesus. Come on. Because being a pastor was not about being in charge or being about power. It's about service. And I can serve God. I serve God as a high school teacher. I serve God as an administrator. I mean, so I don't need to be a pastor or to be in charge of something to know I'm God's child. And does that make sense, church? Talk to me about giving up some power. Does that make any sense? Talk to me about that. About sharing power, sharing ministries, being more engaging of books. Yeah, talk to me about that.
Okay,
It's a
not
tough.
so much that this is giving up power, but God kind of saying like, letting go of my control. So I've been out of work and I've been kind of picky and embarrassed, like, about what job I wanted to take, like not working at Target or getting some job because like of the job I used to have as associate editor, like I didn't want to be in the community at this like lower job. Like you used to do this and now you're the janitor, although it's supposed to be the same, right? You really believe that and you don't bring that home. And so recently I was thinking more and more like, God has worked for me, but maybe I'm looking the wrong way. So I applied to be a substitute teacher, and I'm like, I have like no skills. Like, because leadership is something, there's skills you learn in life, you learn stuff along the way, but I'm like, I don't have time. I have to step it up and be less reactionary because of the person I tend to be that, like, my way is the right way. And, I kind of react because you're wrong. Like, we do that as humans, I think. We're constantly, like, choosing you're right and you're wrong. And even in arguments, like in my marriage and stuff, we'd be like, you think you're right.
That's that collaboration and
You're
counter
wrong.
piece. Yep.
Instead of, like, listening to each other. And so I'm letting go of control, and tomorrow, and it was an accident
And
So I'm totally kind of out of my, like, I used to teach toddlers long ago, but I'm gonna be totally out of my own element. So I was just like, we'll just go and kind of have fun, like,
And that's very humbling to share that with the community,
Yeah.
but also that's part of church too. But I think that is an example of, move with the Spirit. They say, sweet Holy Spirit. We're saying, we're clapping and waving, all that kind of stuff this morning. But if we really are guided by the Spirit came in fire, and fire changes. Fire changes. And I think sometimes we want to sing change, we like change, but we don't want to be changed. Because change means that I have to, again, I love that phrase, I have to maybe give up my seat. And I don't want to do that, because I like to have control. And that's part of what I think church does. And I think one of the things too with our religious brothers and priests, I admire them for many reasons, but there's something good about moving around in terms. Right now in the Archdiocese, there are no terms for pastors. Pastors can be there. You're blessed to have extensions here, but we have priests who've been there, many, many years. I'm not trying to denigrate my brothers who are been very committed to our community, but after a while, you have to discern when is the time for another voice to come.
Yeah.
Want to share?
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting thought for me, what you're saying, is this idea of giving up power, right? Because I don't think that, for as long as the message, Christianity has been in the world, 2,000 years, we still have not quite understood that, which is one of the most fundamental, the very last and most important teaching, right? We often forget, I think. This is one thing I like about, I'm Catholic forever, but one thing I like about certain Protestant denominations is that when I'm from in Mississippi, Holy Communion is never done without foot washing first. Because that's how it happened on Holy Thursday, right? So then when the author of all creation, the word that made everything, gets down and serves, and gives up his power in that way symbolically, right? And then he says, do this and then do all of it in memory of me. So I'm thinking about that. I don't think we really know exactly how to do that. And I think that oftentimes in the church, and I'm just going to say, you talk about how beautiful the church was, how beautiful the icons are, and they are beautiful. They lifted us up, and I believe they've done a tremendous work in evangelization, but that was a struggle. You see, we ain't talked about that. We do a lot of comment on how beautiful it was, you know what I'm saying? But True Colors came out. Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, how do we as church, because I think even in a parish that's, this parish is definitely, I think, on fire with the Holy Spirit. And I think that also one of the challenges that all of us have is how to really move in faith, how to move in a way that's directed by the Holy Ghost as opposed to, because how do we do that not in a way that's mimicking, sort of the political structure, the political ways of doing things. We want to sort of put, how do we do that in such a way the Spirit is leading us to sort of give some of that power away? So I'm answering your question with a question, but I don't think we have yet focused on how to do that crucial part.
And it's process. I think part is calling it out. Again, it's the gumbo today. A lot of things in the gumbo, but I think that's another thing is truth telling.
That's right.
I think having those honest conversations, again, based on the vision, and simply to say, I disagree with you. This is why. When we have the Commission on Racism, every time we gather, we always begin with Eucharist. Why do you guys do that? Why do I intentionally, before we have conversation about race, we're trying to get to a space where we can have honest dialogue? We're not there yet. Just trying to get there. Why do you think Eucharist is the prelude? This kind of ties to your comment. What do you think I do that first?
But Jesus always has to be first.
And specifically, more than that?
Because you want to start your meeting the right way. You want to have the Spirit on all of us, and you want everyone to know that that's what the meeting is about, no matter what happens, no matter what's said, that God is at the start.
But why not a prayer? What do I have in Eucharist?
It also lets people know that everyone's the same, and kind of creates that commonality and that foundation.
That's it?
That's what I was gonna say, what it reminds you of is that we're supposed to be united, one body. It's one body. It's his body.
Can I really call, if I receive the Eucharist, how do I hold racist thoughts in my mind?
That's what I would have.
How do I have that? The two are contradictory. It's kind of the point about, if we're talking about foot washing service, the mandatum that John talks about is connected to, you know, as I've done, you must do. And part of being that foot washer, that servant, is back to the point about surrender, taking off the garments, getting your hands and knees, and doing the busboy's job. Jesus was a busboy. And so a lot of us don't want to, I'm beyond it.
Right.
I own a restaurant. I'm not gonna bust steak.
You just nailed what I was saying. I was like,
Someone wanna say
okay.
something?
I was gonna say, yeah, people do it, you know what I mean? They do it, you know, we were talking at times in Bible study about people that will claim they are the utmost Christian, and I'm not a cradle Catholic, I was a Catholic by association before I became Catholic. But you have people, you know, certain, I don't wanna call out one race, but you'll have people that are, you know, committing murders and police and hits and everything, and they go to confession on, you know, class on Saturday and Sunday, and then by Monday evening, they already got the hit on the next person. But they do it, a lot of people do stuff for appearances, and not really for the real reason they should be doing it, so.
So you want to say something?
That's fine. I own a printing company, and for 30 years, most of my coworkers, people I hired were men carrying big boxes. And about 10 years ago, I hired a woman who had 2 college degrees and a master's degree, far more educated than I am. She runs the printing company with me. And yet I've got lots of customers who will call and specifically ask for me. And for most of my life, I was blind to the privilege of being a man. And there's no reason that anyone should be calling and asking for me when this woman Rachel is doing, taking care of people. And yet people would automatically and continue to ask for me. And when I ask the customers, why are you doing this? They don't even see me either. And I was blind. I mean, remarkably blind. And so when you're talking about leadership and giving up power, I keep empowering this woman who works for me. And the battle I have is not with her. It's with what people, how people see things. And then I know Father Thorne from an old parish. And when I joined the parish, it was basically 2 or 3 white people and then all African Americans. And someone asked me about white privilege. And I looked at them and said, I've never ridden a septibus. And you could have heard a pin drop. And I don't know how to buy tokens, this is just me being truthful. And, you know, unless you walk in each other's shoes sometimes, and I hadn't, your eyes open up. So the encountering people, when Father Thorne's talking about, is getting people to see each other's humans and talking to each other. And that's an amazing thing to do. And after Donald Trump got elected president and was saying things derogatory towards Muslims, I called a mosque and asked if I could come join them in prayer. And I was told, what a stupid question, but I didn't know what the answer was. So I said, no, I really want to know, can I join you in prayer? And they said, what a stupid question. I said, I've never been to a mosque. Can I come? And they went, of course. And the question is stupid because you asked it. You should have just been doing, you were welcome. But I didn't. And that, me not knowing it was because I had never tried. And so when I showed up, I guess it was an imam who was in charge. I had me sit down next to one of the elders that was in the mosque and explain the service to me. But anyway, when until you start walking with other people's shoes, the leadership requires you to do that and not sit on your throne or sit on your whatever. You just have to walk with people. And Jesus walked with people. So, you know, sitting in a church, I was like, it's nice and pretty good at getting every Sunday night. Wasn't always. But it's the walking around when you knew Jesus did his preaching. And it wasn't always in a building. It was out. And I used to live in the west coast of Africa, in Liberia and a couple other countries back in the 1980s. And there's all kinds of wisdom that you're going to encounter people with that is not sitting in a church building, but you got to be out there with them. So guys, anyway, so if you're asking about leadership and what comes out of this COVID, as we all kind of get reborn and encounter each other again, we gotta expand our little world a little bit better and step outside of our comfort zone. And, yeah.
If anything you shared there is very insightful. And again, you know, you're answering your own questions today about leadership and aspects of leadership. You're giving your own energy for your next talk by Ms. Lee, but you're answering your own questions, which is, again, it's kind of a facilitation or a guiding point. For that point about, because you think about, back to that point about power, our Lord did it first. The incarnation and the birth of Christ was a surrender of himself. And not just to come as a man, but he comes as what? A little baby, a little one.
Right there.
So God could have saved us any way God wanted.
That's right.
But God comes to child. You don't hurt the babies. You don't hurt the babies. And the babies are watching.
Right.
Everything you do, they're watching. And we don't think they're paying attention, but they are.
They show you. Yes, they are.
And we want, no one's born and raised in church. We teach it. No one's born to, we teach this stuff. We teach the language of exclusion. We teach it. You know, again, I love stories. I taught high school in South Philly. And a lot of the in high school, a lot of the vision in South Philly was not just about racial, it was about neighborhood. No offense, Mr. Eddie from South Philly too,
No,
but
it's true.
it was about neighborhood.
It's
And
true.
so I remember one time it was I was moderating the lunchroom. It was like a descent into hell. You know, you walk into this. It's like me and another teacher. There's all these kids with projectiles and stuff. Like what happens with fight breaks? Just break it up, Ron. I'm like, no, I don't like break up fights. But anyway, so the kids, I had freshmen and sophomores. I taught them also. I was kind of moderating their tables, these long run tables. And anyway, so this kid, Lorenzo Polizzi, don't forget Lorenzo, little guy, from St. He was from St. Nick's Parish. Anyway, so he said he moved his seat, and of course all the guys sat back like order. And I said, "Hey, Father, what's going on?" I said, "Did you move your seat?" "Oh yeah, I did." I said, "Can you tell me why?" "Well, Father, look at that table." I said, "What's wrong with it?" He said, "O'Brien, O'Malley, Marable, they're Irish." I'm like, "Yeah." He said, I don't do the Irish. I'm Italian." "Wow." It's Lorenzo. Off the high school, first of all, you know?
Yeah.
I said, this black priest is going to tell you, an Italian, okay, you're going back to your table. And you're going to learn to eat together. And a few months later, I saw him with an Irish girl at the dance. I'm like, what happened? He's like, hey, probably, she's hot. But who taught Lorenzo I don't do the Irish? His family. He wasn't born to say Irish, you know, it wasn't, it was mixed marriages were Irish Italian, you know. He learned that. So part of our not re-engagement, but engaging in a different way of church, of leadership, is how do we find those spaces where we really can do church? Especially in this time when we can see this as a problem or an opportunity. And I believe God has given us an opportunity to do something with it. Any more comments? I know we're getting a little later. Anybody else want to share about this?
So one of the dimension that popped up since COVID is this thing around genuineness, as a dimension of leadership. So I think what COVID has done is it's disrupted a lot of these status quo systems, right? It's forced us to go virtual before we wanted to go virtual. It's forced us to make decisions on the fly, right? You couldn't look back because the COVID policies changed overnight. Here's the helpful part. So I think one of the things that positive things being a manager for a long time myself, director myself, is talk about things about shared power, keeping power, those kinds of things. And I totally agree if you keep your eyes on the goal, right? Keep your eyes on the goal. For me personally, when I had a team, I like people taking opinions. But what I did was I made it a safe environment intentionally so that he could express his opinions, right? Because I mean, you know, the old school leadership, like some of us were around theory X and theory Y, was it. I don't know if you got any of you remember theory X, theory Y. They were lazy, they wanted to work. And there was procedures for each one of them. Now it's evolved to a point where, well, it's not just they want or they don't want to work. You have to give them tools, you have to support them. You have to nurture them. So I think this term of genuineness, I think this thing of shared power means that I'm still accountable for it because I've done that. Like, who gets fired because of work? I get fired because I'm responsible. However, I don't know everything. In the old leadership model, the boss knew everything. Oh, the boss can take care of it. No, I don't. I want you on my team because you have a different opinion than I have. So I was always intentional about having this environment where it's safe for you to bring your opinion. Safety and trust are other dimensions that pop up out of this thing. Because at the end of the day, you're going to fire one person. That's you. So.
And I think they're good insights, and you mentioned a point about, you know, a shared goal, common goal. And we know, we don't have to, we can write pastoral plans or write vision statements, but it's the gospel.
That's right, that's right.
We didn't, you know, we write all kinds of stuff about racism in the church. We're good at documents, we love documents. But we've got it. It's called the gospel, how we're called to treat each other.
That's right.
The problem is we don't act on it. And we are not humble enough to do that. But I do agree, back to my point about, you know, they've got to come back. Well, people have choices. They have agency that they never had before. And you can see that as a problem or an opportunity. And what a great time as a parish community to begin to talk about. I heard today about, you know, your new parish council members.
Yeah.
What a great moment to begin to say who needs to be to help assist with leadership. Because parish council is co-partners in leadership with the pastor and the pastor team. And that's a good thing. And you're blessed to have a pastor, he's sitting in the room, but a pastor who really engages that.
Yeah.
And wants that. And again, you're not normal for outside.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I mean that in the sense that, you know, normal in the sense that a lot of our priests like, it's my way. One of the things that Father Mike Kennedy, our Bishop of Clergy, is a great man. He said, he gave us a talk on, it so happened that the presenter could not be there, so he was the one who spoke to us at our annual prayer day. And Michael said, he talked about how, stop saying the words, my priesthood. Because it's not your priesthood. It's God's priesthood. It's gift. And it's gift that you're meant to use and share. It's not yours. I don't deserve to be a priest. It's only because I'm a man and God called me. But we have to really think, and also begin to think of priesthood beyond simply the guy on the altar.
Right.
But we get to see that you're priest,
Yeah.
you're prophet, you're prince and princesses,
Yes.
and you're meant to be in leadership and share and offer sacrifice. You know, I remember I've changed one diaper my entire life. It was my little nephew, who's now much taller than me, he's in college. And one day I was home and I was playing with him and he smelled. I was talking to him, I said to his mother, I said, your son needs to be changed. I can't do it, I'm in the middle of the kitchen. The poor kid was like, they smelled and all the stuff was there. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I kind of took him apart and I'm like, ooh. And he's laughing and smiling. Of course, he did what he does. I got baptized by my nephew. Baptize you don't baptize me. He's laughing. I think to myself, what if every priest in the seminary would change diapers? What a difference it would be. Other thoughts we wrap up. Anybody else want to share something about leadership? You want to put into our gumbo? Yeah.
Hi, so one thing it's definitely not about surrendering the illusion of with control is an illusion, and a lot of times I think about, I don't know, I don't want to get sidetracked, but it's definitely not about me. It's never about me and just my name. It's based off of Mount Moriah, so it means called by God or considered by the Lord. So it's like you were talking about, it's not my priesthood, it's God's priesthood. So it's like, I recognize what's the source? Who's the source? I am not the source, you are not it's this grace, it's the Holy Spirit. So that's what I wanted to bring.
Amen.
That in my image is very limited and very distorted. When we come together, like God works through people. So that's how I see it.
I just wanted to say, to touch on COVID and, moving forward, my sister Mariah and, elder brother Frank are always saying that we can't appreciate the wonderful things that God provides for us if we don't suffer. We can't fully be wrapped up in God's mercy and grace if there isn't suffering. So all that we've had to go through with the police brutality, George Floyd, all the way back to Johnny Damage in the 90s, for driving his cousin's car in Braddock neighborhood in Pittsburgh, was killed by police, his Steeler cousin's grandson. And, cause we can't possibly drive that, can we? So there's just so many things that bring us down, but they never make me question my faith, because I know not anything about or comprehend what God's plan is.
Right.
But I know that He's working it, and He knew all of every single part of us before we were born.
And that's one of the things that I was trying to share, that, I included my mom today about sharing the truth. Like, she was able to understand and know I'm God's child. And that's one of the gifts that I think we as African Americans can bring to our church, is how we look at suffering, how we look at redemption, reconciliation. And another thing too, as we begin to transition and conclude today, is that part of leadership too, is that we don't give up on people.
That's right. Come on now. That's right.
Because we're all on a journey. And I think that's part of, we just can't do that. One of my blessings I've had in priesthood, I started mentoring a man who was incarcerated. And I've been in prison ministry with him for about 10 years now. I realized, as you said, Maurice, about privilege. I'm a black man who's never been arrested. And it's not because of God's grace, and a lot of people pull my collar before I had a collar. It's really directed me. So the fact that I don't have a criminal record is nothing more than my gift. And I had a moral privilege of family. We had one bathroom, and you learn to share.
Yeah.
When you didn't really talk about what's for dinner, I make whatever I make for dinner, that's for dinner. I don't eat that, guess what? There's something about that. I don't do that. I go home, my family, oh no, this is Shane's food. And this is Michael's. What? So anyway, but that's about, I started walking with him, and one day he said to me, he said, Steve, you don't understand, I have a record. And I said, so do I. It's just unpublished. And I told him, y'all got some records in there. You got a record. I got a record. And talk about, the plank and the splinter. I mean, we all got records.
Right.
We also have a defense attorney, Jesus. I know my attorney, right? Okay. But so I walk with him, and it's a walk. It's not like I'm done, I'm good, I'm out of prison. It's a walk. And but the same way people walk with me, my spiritual director walks with me.
Right.
And I'm quite sure. He's like, well, I thought we went beyond that. No, we're still walking with that issue. So again, as you're blessed. I mean, even to have this conversation today, you're blessed. So thank you for your commitment. You're that critical mass of people that perhaps could not be here or want to be here, but you're here. Keep the fire burning. Don't give up. What you're doing is great and it's good, and it's going to make a difference in the life of this community. And continue to have those critical and challenging conversations. Continue to put more stuff in your gumbo.
Yeah.
And hope you learned some things today. Before we transition, what did you learn today between mass and this little conversation? Can anybody get some, I'd love to hear what the take homes. What are you gonna take home with you? Anybody share what you can take home?
I think like your, and I know for me, like your leadership is a journey, like it doesn't stop, it's still continuing.
Love it. It's a journey. It's all a journey. Always walk. Yes, we learn.
Leadership is important, even though you ventured out and you were knocked down and not accepted, but you may not accepted in the church, but outside, you were accepted. Don't give up.
That's right.
That's right. What else? What you learn today in school? Not school. Yes, my brother.
I think leadership is a vocation.
You got called? Called from God? It's a vocation that we all have. But just those guys in seminary and stuff. We're all called to leadership. You spirit? Leadership? What you learn?
I love that line you gave from Lion King. Don't forget who you are.
Remember who you are.
We remember who we are and.
Can you say like, I said in the 8 minutes?
Yes.
The real deep voice, do that?
We
James Earl Jones voice?
Let's hear you singing.
Somebody else, yeah, you learn.
I was thinking that there's a reason why some people don't want to relinquish control or so forth, because they have a fear that you might be treating them the same way as they treated you when the roles are
That could be
reversed.
part of it. Could be the fact I don't have anything else to do.
Right.
I can't make cookies, or I can't, I can't write a story or something, but yeah, that's something that we need to think, and especially us guys. I think us guys especially, surrendering our powers as men, because we live in a male-dominant society, in a church. So being very mindful of that. And like Maurice says, Maurice was saying about that, you being aware of what that looks like, of male privilege. It's not a bad thing if you do it. That's the thing, if we do it. So, realizing there's a blessing to have in this country being white. Doesn't mean that white people are bad. But are you the ally, the advocate, the activist for justice? I know myself, I'm a guy. When I was first asked to take on the role of the commission, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I realized, knowing the system as I do, that for a time, at least, I can use this to get in the doors. For the good, for racial healing and racial justice. And I have no problem, I can move into that today, right now, but there's been many times I've said, you know what, just be honest and tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Tell the blank truth. And I can get to a space, because I know the structure of the archdiocese, I worked in it, where I can say, just be honest about it. Where somebody might not always get. Other things, come on, more things you learned today in school. Yes.
Well, I was particularly touched by what you said that, as church, the leadership of the church, right? The church is all church, but the leadership of the church keeps coming out with all of these documents, and I just started thinking about all those brothers and sisters to us all and all these, right? But we keep coming up with all these documents when actually all we need is we already have, which is the gospel, right? If we would just live that, so that is connected also to the question I asked you around how do we actually learn how to give up power? How do we learn how to move that power around so that, those who are low, at this point, I lift it up, right? So yeah, that was it. That we already have the gospel, we just gotta do it.
Another thing too, again, I'm actually leading a conversation today for James School Board on The Sum of Us by Rachel McGee. Have you heard that book? Called The Sum of Us. It's a great book. And another thing perhaps you may want to continue to add into your conversation about leadership are books like that. But it's a great book. And I just read the first 3 chapters because I have a meeting this afternoon. But how racism affects all of us. And when we exclude people, it tears all of us apart. One of the things that Heather McGee talks about was that was a scene where there was a public pool. And black people began to want to use the pool. And what happened was, this particular part of our country, they actually emptied the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took the water out.
Took
Yeah.
all the water out.
Yeah.
Because rather to do that than to let everybody in the water.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that point about how we rethink things in there. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being
Thank you so much, Father Thorne, and I feel like the circus barber. If you like this, and we have an opportunity with Elena Lee in April, March and April, to drill down, what does that look like here, right here in St. Vincent's?
Yep.
So she's done many a presentation for parishes, and so, well, you'll see in the bulletin, I have a few, not enough of these to save the dates. But thank you for the blessing of helping fanning our embers of this fire, and leading us into Lent. What a perfect time. Thank you again, Father. And thank all of you.
Yeah, for coming this afternoon. Thank
If
you
you
so
have
much.
those sign-up sheets, I'll collect them.
No final comments, you want to say anything, or Pastor?
No, I too would just like to thank Father Thorne. I would like to thank you. Because, when you talk about, we're going to talk about leadership, and then we're going to follow that up with workshops on how to develop leadership skills, because it is a constant, as Suzanne said, a constant journey. And so it doesn't matter what leadership role we may have had in the past. We all know in the last 4 years, how you do anything has changed drastically, and how you make that applicable, or sort of make leadership applicable to what Father Thorne spoke about in his sermon and here. So I want to thank Father Thorne and Alona Lee, and I look forward. I want to thank you. I think we are embarking on a new journey for an even greater St. Vincent de Paul Church. So again, thank you. I have a mass I gotta go say, so I'm gonna take it out. Thank you.
And if you're hungry or thirsty, we partake in the Eucharist, but there's also some all